Hello and welcome to the latest episode of SO Live. I'm Danny Flexen. Delighted to be joined by my old sparring partner, not literally, only metaphorically, thank God, Mr. Ayman Khan. Ayman, how you doing, mate?
I'm good. I've been doing a little bit of sparring, been big up to everyone at the McCracken's gym, been doing a bit of body work in the gym, trying to lose a little bit of weight. So I've been doing some sparring, Danny. I've seen you, like, as I mentioned before, on SecondsOut Live, throw some hands beforehand. You weren't too good back then, but I'm sure you've improved since. But I'm glad to be sparring and jousting with you on SecondsOut Live again this week.
I've got older, wiser, but unfortunately also fatter and less fit. So,
Same.
We'll see how it goes. One day I'll join your not so secret fight club at Donna Colby's house in Ireland. But I've already broken the first rule of Fight Club, so we should probably move on from that. And before we start talking about the big fight of this year, as we kind of cheekily called it in the description, Canelo against Turki Alalshikh. Fighting prowess versus lots and lots of money, I guess. We want to remind you that we are the most interactive show on boxing YouTube, so please do get your comments, questions in. Give us a thumbs up and a subscription if you haven't already, and we'll get through as many of your comments as we can on the show. But yeah, a kind of unexpected feud has erupted over the last couple of weeks between the biggest draw in the sport, in Canelo Alvarez, and the man that many people are calling the saviour of boxing at the moment, Turki Alal-Sheikh, head of the Riyadh season events, HE, as Frank Warren likes to call him endearingly. And basically based around the fact that Canelo didn't seem to want to accept the offer extended to him by Riyadh season for a showdown with Terence Crawford. Instead, deciding for his September fight this year, he'd like to go up against Edgar Berlanga, unbeaten but largely untested and certainly a massive underdog with the bookmakers. We'll put up the tweets in a minute that the two shared. Canelo's very, very short in comparison. But first of all, Ayman, what did you make of the initial public nature of Turkey's criticism of Canelo? I think it caught a lot of people by surprise.
You know, Danny, this is one of those things where when it's talked about how this big influence is coming in and they're great, they're brilliant for boxing, they're going to make all these matchups and they're going to, deliver all these big fight nights for the fighters, make all the fights, and the fans are going to be pleased. And you're just waiting for that first kind of little bit of traction, that bit of friction, sorry, is a better word for it, to come its way. And it's come now in the form of Canelo Alvarez, who doesn't have a hole in his pocket, which is the reason as to why he's able to give a bit of pushback and hold the cards for his own future, because he's had that Saudi money for the past however many years. He took the Floyd Mayweather baton, although he didn't earn it in the ring. He took it in terms of his pay-per-view saleability, and he's been able to sell himself off of the back of that. And he doesn't need the Saudi payday. And if the Saudi payday is if he's ever gonna receive it, it has to be something way bigger out the contention of what he's receiving right now. I don't know whether the Saudis see that as a fair market value or happy to pay maybe a little bit over the price, not too much over, because they would want to be seen as good businessmen. So I was anticipating something along these lines that's happened now with Canelo Alvarez being the one to do it. Whether it means it's off the table completely is another thing. When speaking to someone like Frank Smith, and I asked him about this, look, you've worked with both. You worked with Canelo Alvarez before, and you probably will in the future. And you're working with Saudi's Turkey Al-Sheikh right now. What is it? What's the difference between the two and the way they do business? Frank said, look, I wasn't expecting to get loads out of him, to be honest with you. That's kind of the nature of Frank. He'll keep his cards close to his chest. But he said there, look, this is just one of those moments where Canelo, in his sort of way, where he likes to do business, is he doesn't want to be rushed into any decisions. He's got a fight right now. It's Edgar Berlanga. And then after he's done with Berlanga, he'll then sort his schedule. He won't be dictated to other people's schedules. That's because he's the guy that holds the cards, as he said there. So maybe after the point that he's fought Edgar Berlanga and there's still a slot available, we might see a fight there for Canelo Alvarez over in Saudi. But to say as well, to kind of then throw back out from Turki Al-Sheikh to say, look, I'm not the one who wants easy fights here. That was a little bit of a dig. So maybe there might be some bridges that need to be rebuilt. I don't think too much, because Canelo also still at the end of the day is a businessman. But whether he really wants Crawford, he said it, he's not really that interested in it because he won't get the credit. Don't know. Benavidez, I think he's open to Benavidez, but it has to be astronomical money. That's when it shifts back to Turki Al-Sheikh and saying, well, have you got that money? They probably do, but will they pay it? It's another thing. But for right now, the jabs were very, very much interesting thing to see from Turkey Al-Sheikh.
Well, yeah, I'll read Turkey Al-Sheikh's tweet in a minute. If Vinny, Modfather Vinny, if you can hear us, please do post it up on screen, and then we'll go through it. But just go to the chat for the first time on this week's episode. Thunder Road says, Danny B. Flexen is back. Normal service has been resumed. Thank you very much, Thunder Road. Make sure you're bullying everyone into giving us thumbs up, as you normally do. Adam Hurley says, Canelo's a chicken shit. Enough said. I should point out he actually starred out the last two letters of shit, and I've just ruined it now. So it's my curse word, not Adam Hurley's. Beautiful Golden Dragon says, Grey Dad Guy is the GOAT. Thank you very much. It's two already. What's going on? Red Fox Roman says, His Excellency Canelo Alvarez versus Turkey Al-Sheikh. Gary says, Danny Flexen is back. No flies on you, Gary. Does Capote wear glasses because he got sparred by Grey Dad Guy's son, Josh? Says Beautiful Golden Dragon. I'm not sure sparring's quite Josh Green's thing, but I could be wrong. Big Chunga says, Ayman is so hot.
I am boiling, Danny. I think that's what he's in reference to. I'm sweating back over here. So that's what it means.
Right, okay. Well, I'm sure he'll follow up and clarify one way or the other. we can all be a bit worried about that. Gary says, I have to disagree with Turkey that he's the face of boxing. I believe it's Ayman Khan. Ayman Khan fan club in the house. Ra Hokum says, afternoon. Should have done the show outdoors on this Ho Summer's Day. Ho Summer's Day, eh, Ra? I think that's a Freudian slip. He says, both men showed their pettiness that wealth and power bring. I assume he means Turkey and Canelo, not Ayman and myself. Unfortunately, the face of boxing is Jake Paul, says Harry Zianakis, who's also called himself the God of Speed in his handle. Not sure if that's the drug or the quality. Big Chunga says Ayman Khan is the true face of boxing. He's agreeing with Gary. October Red joined us. Big shout out to October Red. Hey, guys, good afternoon. Lovely to have you with us, October. You're welcome to actually come on the show at some point if you'd like to. Ra Hokum goes on. Canelo is on a duck march, but he's painting himself into a corner. Kind of mixed your metaphors there, Ra. Running out of credible opponents. I mean, that's certainly true. Thunder Road says, good businessmen, ? Saudis are overpaying for everything in order to reshape their image. Boxing, football. When you have deep pockets, you don't have to pinch. It's a valid point. Harry Zianakis now says, you guys are mentioning people that nobody knows. Jake Paul reaches a much wider audience than any of the bozos you guys are mentioning. So the face of boxing is unfortunately Jake Paul. Thanks, Harry. I hope you're on Jake's payroll because you're certainly doing the job for him right now. Big Chungus says, we all know what I meant with a little wink face. So, Ayman, you and Big Chungus maybe need to get a room. But that's something we can discuss another time. I'm just looking now to see if Vinny has put up the tweet. I can't see it on my screen, but Vinny, if you can hear me, please do put up the Turkey Al-Sheikh tweet, but I'll read it off my phone for now. So that's Canelo's response. Okay, so Turkey said, I heard what Canelo said, that he respects me, but doesn't like the way we do business. As for him respecting me, it doesn't matter to me if he does or not. So he woke up and chose violence, clearly. That's my words, not Turkey's. As for the way I do business, I know why he doesn't like it, because I only target big fights at fair prices. So, of course, anyone who likes easy fights won't like that. And I know how he feels after losing to B-Volt, so he's been looking for easier fights ever since. I mean, first of all, how does Turkey know how he feels after losing to B-Volt? Which kind of career-defining fights has he lost? But yeah, I don't want to nail my colours to anyone's march just yet. Also, I'm not the one who's afraid of fighting Benavidez or Crawford. Can we take from that Turkey's like wanting to fight Benavidez or Crawford? He is courageous enough to get in there with one of them. He's mad, isn't he? He reminds me of Vince McMahon. Therefore, I knew he was wasting our time at making excuses with big amounts of money that can't be paid. So I'm continuing my way to make big fights that serve the boxing world, and he's on his way to making easy show-only fights. Just reading that back, it's actually more brutal than I remember it being the first time. Like, he's talking like a fighter engaging in trash talk with another fighter. Now, I've got huge respect for Turkey Al-Sheikh and what he's done for the sport so far, putting together fights people want to see, big events, emptying the coffers to do so. I'm sure there are, as someone mentioned in the chat, ulterior motives in doing so as well. But I do have a bit of an issue with people who aren't actively involved in the fighting between the ropes, talking about a fighter in that way, in that kind of macho, trying to kind of, talking about them being scared and insecure and that kind of thing. You know, I wouldn't feel comfortable talking about a fighter in that way because I haven't got in there in a top level fight. I wouldn't be courageous enough or good enough to fight a Crawford or a Benavidez, and neither would Turkey, let's be honest. So I'm not sure how I feel about that. But Vinny, if you've got Canelo's very, very brief and to the point response, he didn't have much to say. I think it's fair to say he did his talking in emojis, as so many of the. Well, I don't know. Canelo's a millennial, isn't he? He's not Gen Z, so I'm not sure if he should be talking in emojis. But anyway, I think I've already gone Team Canelo, so it's too late. But yeah, two different laughing emojis there. I think Canelo water off a duck's back, really, isn't it? As long as he remains the biggest draw in the sport, I think he can pretty much do what he wants. But Ayman, what do you make of Turkey's original kind of shot across the bows? It does seem maybe a bit of an overreaction.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Dana White and his stance when a fighter moves on or decides to take a different path or essentially doesn't, go along his path or go along his route. It's that the organization or the entity is bigger than the fighter, and the fighter is secondary to whatever that entity organization is looking to forge its way through towards. And now it's a completely different game with UFC and boxing, but Dana's stance is very much similar to how Turkey Al-Sheikh's stance is right here. Is that when take a look at how Dana reacted when Francis Ngannou left, it was all fumble the bag this, and now they're trying to scratch away some of the history that Ngannou created whilst he was with the UFC. And he obviously came over to boxing and earned career high payday after career high payday, and probably will do again if he comes back to boxing. But that's what happens in the UFC with Dana White. And I think with Turkey Al-Sheikh, who is, you almost want to go as far as to say essentially has ownership over boxing without actually having the ownership of the organizations and promotional outfits yet, but pulls all the strings right now. He's reacting like someone who feels like that they own boxing. And when your chess pieces or pieces of the puzzle don't want to move because you feel you have ownership over them, and they, I guess, go rogue, then you're going to be annoyed by that. You're going to be pissed off by that. So I can imagine he's feeling that way because one, he hasn't been able to land a big, huge event for Saudi Riyadh because it's a big, huge attraction, and those boxing fans over in Saudi Arabia who do follow boxing will know Canelo Alvarez, and he's one of the. I imagine he'll have earmarked when it comes to the Saudi plan for boxing as to having. He wanted Usyk, he wanted Crawford, he wanted Anthony Joshua, he wanted Tyson Fury, he wanted Gervonta Davis. He wanted Floyd Mayweather, who was seen over in the region already, and he wanted Canelo Alvarez, and he hasn't got Canelo Alvarez as of yet. And that must be frustrating for someone who's been able to get everything his own way so far. Probably just needs to play it cool for now, and he will. I think I saw an interview with him. I think it was with Fight Hub. They did an interview. I thought it came across really well, actually, in terms of his answers as to how he fielded the questions about the situation. But and this is probably one of the pitfalls that promoters have had in the past when it comes to making fights, that when you don't get your way, you can sometimes have this little bit of fractious relationship. If you're as good as you say you are, you should be able to get everyone on board. That's the challenge now for Turkey Al-Sheikh. Here's where you kind of earn the credit. I think Danny is having a little bit of connection issues. Vinny, if you just let me know on my in the chat as well, if that is the case. Whilst Danny is recovering his connection, I think he's been knocked out cold from my poignant statements there. I'll jump to the chat though, whilst we wait for Danny to come back through. He's just getting his internet all sorted. I'll pick up on the chat right here. We all know Big Chungas. We all know what I meant. I'm not too sure if I knew what you meant, Big Chungas. Tank is definitely much more the face of boxing than the people you mentioned. Gervonta Tank Davis, look, I've seen before in previous jobs and the traction he can get if by just putting a clip out of him. Absolutely. Whether he resonates over to the UK, Europe, and beyond is another thing. There were rumors towards the back end of last year, heading into this year, that we would be seeing Gervonta Davis in the UK. Now, I couldn't put my finger as to what fight that would be, But that hasn't materialized, and we're now 8 months into the year, looking towards the back end of the year now. It seems very unlikely that someone like Gervonta Davis is going to be fighting in the UK. Will he land a fight over in Saudi Arabia? We saw Turkey Al-Sheikh taking a picture with Shakur Stevenson as well, too. Another fighter who promotionally is free right now, looking to find his feet with a new promoter. Again, no news on that right now, but we see someone like Shakur Stevenson who's going to forge his way as a new face of boxing as well, over in Saudi Arabia. Let me just get a message over to Danny. Missing Danny already in the Seconds Out Live chat. This is a good topic and should be discussed. Thanks for the invite too. You're very welcome, October Red. I extend that offer as well from Danny Flexen. Adam Hurley is saying Turk offered Canelo 100 mil to fight Crawford. Canelo basically said that Crawford was too easy and assaulted Turkey. What did Turkey do? I don't think. Look, sure, but it's almost like when Khan fought Crawford, and Khan fought Canelo, and Canelo did what he did to Amir Khan, and he did come out with no credit in that fight. But really, he kind of shouldn't have come out with much credit because it was a guy at, what was it, 160, around that weight, who shouldn't have been anywhere near that weight in Amir Khan. And he's looking at that similar sort of way. Two fighters who come from similar sort of weights coming up to what would be now super middle as well, too. To then fight Canelo Alvarez, like, what credit really is he going to come out with from that fight, apart from an even more, an even increased richer bank account and another K on his record? Does Canelo particularly want that right now without getting that credit? I think his legacy is more important to him than the paycheck. Speaking of legacy being more important to them than the paycheck, Danny Flexen is back. I'm going to give you the hot tag. I was bumping and feeding. Now I can give you the tag, Danny. You're back in.
Speaking of legacy and money, Danny Flexen's the complete opposite, is what I thought you were going to say. Yeah, I'm going to go to the chat briefly because obviously I didn't hear any of the last 5 minutes. But yeah, so sorry, guys, not sure what happened. I think my computer suffered some form of heat stroke or something. Beautiful Golden Dragon says October Red is hot. It seems to be a bit of everyone's on heat in the chat today. But great, if we can get people together, that's lovely. Harry Zianakis says Tank is definitely not on the face of boxing than the people you mentioned. Harry, I thought it was Jake Paul. Adam Hurley says Turkey offered Canelo 100 million to fight Crawford, and Canelo basically said that Crawford was too easy and insulted Turkey. What did Turkey do? I mean, I think Turkey's tweet was still quite a big overreaction. MB says, I've no interest in watching Canelo versus Crawford anyway. Ra Hokum says, I detest both. Canelo for boxing reasons, Turkey for personal. Ideally, they both fail and the industry resets. And Ra Hokum also says, Benavidez is too big, Bud is too small. He wants the extra dollars to fight either. Gary says, giving Turkey the power and control of boxing was the biggest mistake in recent times. Al Heyman is the one who hasn't bent the knee yet. Ra Hokum says, don't underestimate how petty middle-aged mid-management men can be when faced with opposition to their plans. And that's all Turkey is. Got given a job because he went to school with the prince. Adam Hurley says, Canelo said Crawford's too small, but Crawford said he would fight him at 168, so they would be the same size. Canelo must suck at maths is what we say here. Ra Hokum says he's digging out Zoo as well, though, saying he won't work with him. Thunder Road says, being connected to MBS doesn't put you in mid-management. You just can't upset him like the Skills Challenge guy did and basically disappeared. Is that disappeared or disappeared? We do not know. Red Fox Roman says, Turkey has been good for boxing in the short term, putting on fights that may never have happened. Thunder Road says, when will Danny and Ayman release the photo of the two of them in Birmingham a few weeks ago, dressed as WWE's Pretty Deadly? Yes, boy. I'm actually a big Pretty Deadly fan. I interviewed them, didn't I? Was it a year ago now? At that junket that they did?
Yep.
Yeah, they were asking me for tips on how to get over. Clearly didn't take any of them as they're still struggling. But Gary says, Danny's got his eyes on that October Red lipstick flexing on the prowl. Gary, it's not me. It was, who was it? Beautiful Golden Dragon, who's now telling October Red it's too hot for socks. So, yeah, I think these two need to just go and have their own private chat at this point. But yeah, getting back to the meat of the conversation, no pun intended. Canelo, I think it was an overreaction from Turkey, but on the Canelo side, there is a case to answer. And I'm sorry if Ayman already covered this when I got cut off. But he is fighting people that no one's particularly, or the boxing world at large, doesn't seem particularly interested in him fighting. And you've got to wonder how long it's going to be before the market adapts, that Canelo's figures that he generates start falling short of what he requests. You know, Jaime Munguia turned out to be a good fight, but no one expected Canelo to lose. And it will be the same with Edgar Berlanga, no disrespect to him. And it's been the same for maybe the last 4 fights, ever since Dimitri Bivol, I suppose. No one's expected Canelo to lose the fight. Not just that he's been the favourite with the bookies, but very rarely is anyone picking the upset in Canelo fights. And that's not going to change probably against anyone really at super middleweight. I'm not saying it necessarily changed against Crawford, but we've already seen people we've interviewed on the channel picking Crawford to win that potential fight. So at least there's a bit of intrigue there. You know, Crawford's a undisputed champion at 2 weights, 4-weight world champion overall, and 168, in my view, is a bridge too far. I think as good as you are, you will come to a point where size beats skill. But even with that, and Canelo's obviously very skillful in his own right, but I think that is an intriguing contest. I think you'll get enough people that feel like Crawford might just pull it off to make it interesting, and Canelo still starts to favour it. It seems like the sort of fight where Canelo can make a lot of money but still expect to win, still be a big favourite. I don't see why he'd be so against it. David Benavidez is a different story. You know, he's a huge 168-pounder, obviously now moved up to 175. So I kind of get that and why he doesn't necessarily want to run in that direction. But how long can Canelo stay as the top draw in boxing if he continues to take these fights that are some way short of 50-50? Ayman, aside from Benavidez and Crawford, is there anyone you're particularly interested in Canelo fighting at this point?
No, I mean, part of it, and this is where Canelo come out in his statement as well too, didn't he? I think he mentioned on another podcast, I'd reference it if I could remember off the top of my head and give it the full credit, but I believe it's there out on social media. He said, the IBF has stripped me from my super middleweight belt because I don't want to fight William Skull. Who is William Skull? I don't know who William Skull is, and even hardcore boxing fans won't have really tracked William Skull's career, even though he's earned his position to be IBF mandatory. You're looking at a division there where kind of the challengers aren't really building themselves up because they're all kind of working towards getting that one big, excuse the pun, but the payday. That's what this is all about here. So he could probably have these fights and continue to be fed these fights by your PBCs and Matchrooms and Top Rank or whatever, because they also want in on the payday and have someone like an Mbili or a Pacheco coming in and feed those type of fights going forward for the next year and a half. But my kind of thinking would probably be that I reckon Canelo will probably end up going back up to light heavyweight and try to capture a title back at light heavyweight once Beterbiev and Bivol have had their fight. One of them probably moves out of the picture, probably Beterbiev if he wins or retires, belts fragment, and then when one of those belts fragment, I'm sure one of the contenders to one of the titles will happily fight Canelo for that title because they know it's probably the best or biggest payday they were going to get. It was a point where, before Kovalev fought Canelo, Yard was going to potentially fight Canelo, wasn't he? And that was kind of talked about and mooted about. Callum Smith, he's had previous with as well in the past, so maybe they might entertain that in the future. But that's kind of what, at super middle, it's really drying up for Canelo Alvarez. I really doubt he's going to go down. So it's going to be either he has some sort of kind of gimmick fight where he maybe goes into or ventures into maybe fighting like a McGregor or something like that, or he goes into going up to light heavyweight, unless they can kind of smooth the rocky waters and get this Crawford fight over the line.
Yeah, I mean, before we go back to the chat, I should say we've already put a poll out. Modfather Vinny on the ball as always. We're just asking you quite simply, whose side are you on? Are you Team Turkey or Team Canelo? Let us know, and we'll give you the result at the end of the show. Diane Abbott's wig says, with regard to dude that said Al Heyman hasn't bent the knee to Turkey, most of the fighters on the LA card were Al Heyman fighters. Thunder Road, bit late into proceedings, says, chat, don't forget to hit the thumbs up. Putting it in caps doesn't doesn't excuse your tardiness, Thunder Road. You're, an unpaid member of the team. October Red agrees, though, and says, yes, hit the likes. And she shared it on X, which is always appreciated. Gary says, thanks, October. Danny loves that. I'm assuming Gary means having my stuff shared on Twitter. Not sure what else he could be referring to. But yeah, it should be a third option. Hate both, says Ra Hokum. Ra, we know your feelings, mate. You're if you don't vote, we'll know that you voted to hate both. It's fine. It goes without saying. Adam Hurley says, Canelo lies a lot, so we don't know whether Turkey really had an attitude or not. Okay. Toby Bartlett says, what up, Abs? I hope all is well, sis. There you go. Thanks, Toby. We're here too, so nice to see you. So yeah, moving on from that, we know Canelo's not going to fight Crawford in September. He's fighting Edgar Berlanga. The idea of Crawford having a rematch with Errol Spence, who he thoroughly dominated, isn't particularly palatable and now looks certain not to happen. Spence looks likely to fight Sebastian Fundora for a £154 belt in December. Where does that leave Crawford? Because he's shown no real interest in fighting a Boots Ennis, who is another kind of viable opponent for him. What do you think might be next for Terence Crawford now, Ayman?
Virgil Ortiz, most likely, off of the back of what was a brilliant fight between him and Bohachuk. I didn't score the fight. I was in the depths of recovering from an illness, but I tuned in from round 4 and I watched. I thought, have I missed this? Have I woken up from my stupor a little bit late and have missed a brilliant Virgil Ortiz finish? And I was surprised to see Bohachuk still in there and looking very, very good in there against Ortiz. And look, I didn't score it myself, but there's a lot of talk and a lot of upset that Bohachuk didn't get the victory. I was quite surprised actually when I talk about Ortiz getting the finish over him. I was expecting off the back of seeing a good operator in the form of Brandon Adams being able to finish Bohachuk I think it was a year or so back. I would have thought that Ortiz would be able to do the same, and he caught him with the same sort of left hook, but wasn't able to finish Bohachuk in that fight. I think Bohachuk also made the changes in his game to kind of lean over and make sure his chin wasn't exposed to make sure the smaller fighter wasn't able to find that gap to finish the job off for him. But it was a good fight nonetheless, and he seems more likely now to be the next opponent for Terence Crawford at 154, whilst, like we mentioned there, Spencer Medora are probably tied up. I think there needs to be a little bit of clever and cute matchmaking for Crawford. You wouldn't put it behind the scenes to kind of say when it came to 154 and him moving up there, look, we can't kill the golden goose here in Crawford, so let's find a guy here who doesn't quite balloon up in weight, and this is a weight mismatch that kind of puts Crawford out of the game. So I think there was a tweet again. I'm sure I saw it, but it was on the night both of them weighed within a pound of each other. I'm talking Crawford and Majumov. Now, when you look at that in the 154 division, you'd probably bank on someone like a Fundora or a Zoo to weigh a lot more than 1 pound of difference between themselves and Crawford on the night. So they've got to be cute with that matchmaking there. That's why I think someone like Ortiz, who doesn't really look like a fighter who's all that much bigger than 154 on the night, he definitely will, of course, put a bit on, but not a massive 154 at all. I think they've got to pick the right fighter, and I think Ortiz is probably that, unless they look to circumvent and look to avoid a fight at 154 and potentially do something like there was a post, wasn't there, 6 months or so, 7 months or so back, maybe a little bit longer, where they threw out Crawford versus Eubank, and that was almost universally panned, wasn't it, Danny? Also, a very outside bet, but I want to put it in people's minds. I think 3 weeks ago, Gennady Golovkin was asked, look, I'm not retired. I don't want to consider myself retired. And if I'm very much interested in having an interesting offer put forward to me, an interesting offer to Gennady Golovkin might be a return at middleweight against someone like a Terence Crawford. The Saudis would have the money, I'm sure, to coax someone like Gennady Golovkin out of retirement, whether it is or not. But for me, most likely of all those options, Terence Crawford would probably be taken on Virgil Ortiz Jr. Wasn't
there a time when it seemed like Crawford might fight one of the Charlos at middleweight?
Yeah. I don't know what's happening with the Charlos right now.
Yeah.
All quiet with them. Very odd career.
All quiet on the Charlo front. Yeah, I mean, Virgil Ortiz, you could say he's earned the shot from that win at the weekend, but to me, stylistically, he seems absolutely tailor-made for Crawford. As you pointed out, he's not a particularly big 154-pounder. He's not long moved up from 147 himself. He's a skillful fighter when he's being aggressive. You know, he's good at cutting the ring off and finding the gaps, but he's not particularly defensively adept. And you just got to think Crawford will counter him all night long or as long as the fight lasts. But I suppose it picks up another belt potentially at 154. And then if Crawford's aim outside of Canelo is to unify and become undisputed at a third weight, which is, you know, pretty much unheard of, but if that is his idea, will we end up seeing Crawford against Spence once again, but the rematch being up at 154? That's if Spence can get the job done against Sebastian Fundora. Well, maybe we'll talk about that fight in a minute, but let's just go through the chat. Toby Bartlett says, I did mention SO first. Check your comments. I did check the comments, Toby, so I apologize. You did say hello to us and the chat first. Gary says, Crawford will face Ortiz. Turkey will make that fight, and De La Hoya will then have to bend the knee. Where are we? Beautiful Golden Dragon says, could you get October Red on the stream already? This show has gone to shit. Thanks for that, Beautiful Golden Dragon. I appreciate the fact you feel it's gone to shit, yet you're still here, showing great loyalty there. October Red, speaking of devil, says one of the twins wasn't too well, I believe, referring to the Charlos. Thunder Road says, Ayman was sick this weekend. I thought I saw a video of him scurrying towards the South Bermondsey station after Watford scored a late winner away to Millwall. Any truth to this scurrilous rumour, Ayman?
Great moment, but I had to watch that from home, and I threw up probably about 45 minutes after that result. I was due to go out and meet a friend to go watch Blues versus Reading. Had a shower, put my jumper on. I was like, oh, I'm too hot. I know what's coming next. And then bam, it was out there. So no, I was nowhere near the actual ground. I was at home watching.
Well, let us all thank you for not being overly graphic. Watford scoring a late winner away to Millwall. If you don't want to score a late winner, that's like the last place you'd want to score a late winner, isn't it?
Yeah. But beautiful goal from Rajovich. Great to see us back in the red shorts too, as Josh Green pointed out.
Wow. Okay. Josh Green's football knowledge extends beyond Peterborough. I'm very, very impressed. So Spence against Fundora. We obviously haven't seen hide nor hair of Errol Spence since the debilitating defeat to Terence Crawford. Sebastian Fundora upset Victor to win that 154-pound title, and obviously has those incredible dimensions for the weight as well. How much chance do you give a very inactive and perhaps demoralised Errol Spence against someone who's probably feeling better than they have in their career so far in Fundora?
It's so hard to say because we just don't know where Errol Spence is after the car crash and then the high-level fight. Because he had the car crash and they come back against Daniel Garcia, who, look, he isn't like an elite level fighter, but Danny Garcia at minimum is a solid world-class level fighter. So to come back off of the car crash and then beat Garcia shows that you're still capable to operate at the highest level. But then when he fought Crawford, and I was speaking to some of the other guys in the industry when we were discussing just Spence, and it was like, there's one moment in the fight with Spence where Spence and Crawford throw a jab, and Crawford lands the jab, and then if I remember it correctly, Spence throws his jab. Crawford's here in front of him, but Spence's jab is over here, and it's because it must be because he's got these problems with his eyes, which I think he's since had surgery for. I think he's since had a detached retina, didn't he?
Yeah.
I imagine something like that is real difficult to recover from, and you have to manage an injury like that properly, otherwise you're going to have that problem reoccur and it's going to completely affect your boxing career. And I think that's what's happened here, is that will be an issue for Errol Spence. Whether he's still motivated enough to want to fight against at this level, or feel that he has the confidence to fight at this level, remains to be seen, because we haven't seen him in the ring. There's no announcements there. There's whispers and talks about these fights, but there's nothing concrete about these fights. Luckily, we aren't seeing kind of reports of Spence, being intoxicated and coming out of various places like we used to see every now and again before the car crash kind of happened. You don't see Spence kind of giving these interviews and coming across as, drunk and things. So, those are kind of good signs to say that he'll return back to the ring. But Fundora is a fighter who knows exactly, even though he's still quite young, he knows exactly what he is. He's not there to outbox you and outfox you. He's there to go straight through you. And he's got a tight guard. He's got an awkward frame. He fights and punches while you're punching. There's only really one way that Spence is going to have to go at him, and he's not going to outbox him either. He's going to have to outdog him and outfight him. And if you haven't got that dog and fight in him, Fundora's going to find that out. So really, we just need to see that fight with Fundora to know exactly where it stands. I'd make Fundora a real big favorite in that fight as it stands right now, given the way Spence was. That was a battle of two elite level fighters, but I can't remember seeing another elite level fighter so outclassed in that fight in recent memory. Maybe someone in the chat, or Danny, you can come up with someone who'd outclass someone else like that in such a way, because it was a magnificent performance from Crawford, but one that really kind of left a bit of worry from Spence's point of view because of what had happened to him outside the ring previously.
Yeah, I mean, two elite level fighters is kind of hard to say, isn't it? Everyone always points to Joe Calzaghe doing what he did against Jeff Lacey, who was a fellow title holder at the time at super middleweight, but wasn't really considered elite, I don't think, coming into the fight. So I suppose, much further back, but Roy Jones Jr. against James Toney would probably be the last one, the one that really sticks out from my youth, if anything. After we'd moved to colour television, I should point out. I like your comment about Fundora as well, having an awkward frame. I'm definitely going to steal that. I'm not fat. I'm not greedy. I've just got an awkward frame. So that's what I'm going to use going forward.
Awkward frame.
Yeah, awkward frame. Al Cuerpo Boxing says, Canelo made $100 million with Caleb Plant. Guarantee, pay-per-view, gate, other back end. Turkey will eventually work with Canelo Promotions and sit down with Tom Brown with the numbers. Politics. Very reasonable suggestion, Al Cuerpo. But how reasonable is it of Turkey to put public statements like that out on social media? Still hasn't been deleted. When it comes to them actually sitting down and working out the politics, surely that will leave some sort of rancor or bitterness. I don't know. SIBB says, I think Spence is broken, but Fundora is not that special. If he moves to his correct weight, cruiser or heavyweight, he would not even be relevant in boxing. Interesting. Gary says, $100 million with Caleb Plant. Bro, no offense, no one believes that. Okay, well, we shall see. I should also point out, we've had a message in the group chat from Josh Green. Lean Josh Green says, my football knowledge is on point. Thank you. So apologies, Josh, for besmirching your football knowledge. I will insult your boxing or darts knowledge in future. Just kidding, Josh. Don't go back in the group chat. I can't take it. So we'll see what happens with those guys. But they're not the only ones making news this week. We're going to talk about Derek Chisora and some of his more contentious comments in a little while. But a bit of a left field topic that I picked out for this week's episode. We've been interviewing a lot of people in the build-up to Anthony Joshua against Daniel Dubois for the IBF heavyweight title. AJ's bid to become a 3-time world heavyweight champion, of course, September 21st at Wembley Stadium. And the vast majority of people who are previewing the fight, predicting the fight, have pointed out that they feel Joshua is a much improved fighter in recent times, and they've given pretty much all the credit for that to Ben Davison, his current head trainer out in Harlow at the Ben Davison Performance Centre. And it just struck me that this is a bit of quite a fairy tale rise, really, for someone who was cruelly mocked early in his career as boxer-sized Ben during his associations with first Tyson Fury and then Billy Joe Saunders. Although in real life, I think the relationship with Saunders was actually started earlier. Wanted to have a little talk about that. And Ayman, you followed boxing for a long time. I'm sure you were around when Ben Davison first became someone of note in the sport. What was your kind of opinion of him when he first broke on the scene, and has it evolved over time?
Yeah, I never was really one of these that kind of laid on to Ben and as a young trainer or coach who's trying to find their way. I never really kind of found the point of And I get it. Some of the old school, older veterans, older heads might kind of look at a new guy coming in with different ideas and say, you're not about it. You don't do things our way. You're bound to fail. And through kind of these monikers at Ben, through kind of reasons to slate him and, throw a bit of mud on him, because he was getting some fighters and getting some good fighters, attracting good fighters to his gym. I can understand why some in the game, some of the coaches in the game might have felt that way. I'm not saying they did, but I can get it from the outside looking in. But I wasn't one of those who looked at it that sort of way, because you've got to have room for people. If you don't, boxing is one of those sports where you allow everyone in. There's no real barrier to, and that comes from all angles on all ways of it, including training. So when you have someone with new and different ideas, I'm not one of those to poo-poo it or to shut it down. I want to kind of see the proof is in the pudding with your fighters. If your fighters succeed, then they succeed, and if they don't, then they fail, and we'll end up criticizing. We'll talk about it and we'll dissect it. And Ben's, I think he's rid kind of both sides of it, hasn't he? He's had some fighters where he's fashioned them to his sort of style, and they haven't kind of worked out, like a Lee McGregor or a Josh Taylor, barring, of course, Josh Taylor did win the undisputed world titles, but Shane McGuigan did do a large part of that in getting him to that position, since I think both fighters have left that gym. But then there are other fighters who, like Lee Wood, who's had a real resurgence under Ben and really kind of puts down his success. And this was a fighter who was going to retire and looking at the exit door of the sport, as opposed to reaching and grabbing for a world title here, who probably had one last chance after leaving Ingle, going to, I think it was Dave Caldwell, and then moving to Ben Davison. Really wanted one last throw, and he looked brilliant against Kanju in that fight when he won the regular title. And then, look, again, you can look at it from both sides of the point of view, where maybe the game plan wasn't great, and part of Ben Davison's forte here, part of his strengths is the game planning, the research watching, and the game planning in terms of looking at the fighter that you've got in front of you and finding out what they do, and then planning for it to meticulous detail. But then your fighter was getting beaten up quite a lot by Josh, but you found that punch. So it depends the way that you want to look at it as to whether the research kind of paid off here. But someone who's doing things differently has to be credited. I think he did rub up a couple of people the wrong way, kind of saying that, he worked as hard as more hard than other people in the industry, other gyms and trainers did do in the UK. I don't think people kind of took that to liking, but I think for me, when you're trying to adapt things that football has done, with like research analysis on your footballers and how they play football, and creating a profile of the footballer and adapting that to boxing, I think that's worked really well for him. And it was interesting actually to hear that Callum Simpson had essentially got a similar sort of thing. The Barnsley football analyst had given him a research packet on Zach Shelley and told him, when he does this, he's going to do this. So this is what you can do here. They've shown him all the gaps of what he likes and what he doesn't like. And then Callum Simpson goes into that fight well equipped. And this is where someone like AJ comes into the equation, where AJ is always seeking for knowledge from all corners and at all times, most famously or infamously from Clifton Mitchell when he's heading to the ring against Alexander Usyk. How do I fight this guy? What do you think I should do? He's always searching for answers to questions that he's got, and he's got an unlimited source of questions that are popping into his mind. Well, Ben Davison, it seems right now, has the answers. I believe that the working relationship between Ben and AJ started before the actual official relationship, in that he'd asked for a game plan, whether officially or unofficially, but got it nonetheless. In the Robert Helenius fight, where Derek James was in the corner, that led to that finish where some were disappointed that Joshua got the finish in the end. I think it was like the 6th, 7th round, and people were expecting that AJ would dispatch of him a lot earlier, but he did do it to devastating effect and got the desired outcome with that one-punch knockout against Robert Helenius. And I think they sort of decided there, look, we can kind of work together here, and we can have a good, fruitful relationship. Proof will be in the pudding with AJ. They're very confident that they'll get Alexander Usyk the third time, and Alexander Usyk has said, look, I'm open to the third time fight. AJ's given me 2 opportunities. I'll give him a third one if he earns it. So Ben will have that opportunity if he can earn it by beating Daniel Dubois and have that third crack at Alexander Usyk. And then I think we'll see, look, someone like Ben really kind of get the credit for beating someone like Alexander Usyk if he can manage and fashion his fighter towards that path. But yeah, I was never one of those people to kind of shut him down or tread on him, because that's not my ethos and things. But it's shark infested waters when it comes to boxing. You've got to yield results, and fighters have come and gone with him. But the biggest one right now that he will be judged upon is AJ. And if he falters against Daniel Dubois, it's going to come big time for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should point out, as the fighters always do, that it's not just Ben Davison there at the Performance Centre that bears his name. You've got Barry Smith, very experienced, hand assisting as well. You've got Lee Wiley doing a lot of the video analysis work and the preparing dossiers that Ayman was talking about. And I think they kind of proved themselves with the work they've done with Lee Wood. And you've got to give Wood himself a lot of credit, of course, but he was floundering at domestic level a number of years ago. There's no two ways about it. I interviewed him last week and he was talking about a lot of the stuff they do at that gym. I've been to the gym. Ayman has too, and we've seen some of the work they do and the level of detail they go into. It is incredibly impressive. You know, as I said, Lee Wood was floundering. He lost in the semi-finals of the MTK Golden Contract Tournament, a tournament which no one talks about anymore for maybe obvious reasons. And he's gone from that, and the springboard, I guess, was the Reece Mould fight where he won that British title. But he's gone from that to becoming a two-time world champion, you know, beating the likes of Mick Conlan, Josh Warrington, the revenge win over Maurizio Lara. Pound for pound, one of the best fighters in Britain, certainly in his prime. He's been inactive for a little while now, hoping to come back before the end of the year. If you watch the interview on the channel, you'll see him talk about that. So the incredible work the whole team have done around Lee Wood. And I think it also needs buy-in, and that's why what Ayman said about Anthony Joshua is so important, because Lee Wood's given himself kind of heart and soul into those new methods. He's bought into it straight away. They've showed him not just that it does work through his improved performance, but why it works, what he needs to do, what his role to play is. And they've shown it consistently as well. And I think AJ will have seen that with other fighters, and then he'll have bought into it. And hopefully he'll get what he's looking for against Daniel Dubois, that reinforces the message that this is where he needs to be. And this is the method towards the latter part of his career that he needs to employ. But yeah, I mean, they do great work. They've attracted a lot more fighters now. I did say this to Lee Wood when we spoke last week, that you don't want to have, like he said, you don't want to have too many fighters coming into the gym, because then you won't get the one-on-one attention that we've thrived upon in the past. You've got Moses Itauma, next great heavyweight, training there now. Fabio Wardley, current British heavyweight champions there. And while this is probably good in terms of they can all work together and spar each other or train alongside each other, the kind of key heavyweights that are there, it's not just a heavyweight gym. You know, I know Jamie TKV's there as well, for example, another heavyweight. But you've got Lee Wood and you've got some of the lighter guys as well, and they don't want it to get too busy. It is kind of a bespoke setup they've got there, and they do different things with different fighters, depending on who they're fighting as well and who gets priority and the way they train and so on. But I think Davison's come a long way from a guy who was considered unfairly, I think, because of his age and also the fact that he hadn't been a professional boxer in his own right, somewhat lesser than some of the heads that were there already. And I think he's already proved a lot of people wrong, but I think AJ is the opportunity to take that to a whole new level. So we shall see how that all works out. We'll just go to the chat before we move on to our final segment. Toby Bartlett points out that Jordan Gill had a great win over Mick Conlan while training at Ben Davison's gym. Very good point. Jordan Gill, of course, lifelong friend, almost lifelong friend of Lee Wood. Used to share a flat together as well. So I think that's why he ended up there. The Godfather of Boxing is talking about the Canelo purse, but we don't really want that to take over the show. Gary says, not sure Ben Davison has made AJ any better. Look at AJ's recent opponents, easy fights. AJ is throwing a jab right hand like normal against inferior opponents. Maybe there's a motivational aspect, though. Maybe believing in the team around him has made him more confident in the ring. Maybe, you know, it's a lot of maybes, but you've got to think that with Derek James, because they didn't spend that long together and the performances were subpar, you've got to think that maybe he didn't fully trust in what he was being taught there. Maybe the bond wasn't there, particularly with that setup. Gary says, Barry the Bacon Smith. We don't like fat shaming here, Gary. Got the tactics wrong in the Wardley Clark fight. Thunder Road says, I can't think of a single Dominic Ingle fighter right now. What about David Caldwell? I see them doing interviews more than I see them in the corner these days. I mean, I think that's a little unfair, Thunder Road, as much as I appreciate all you do to get the thumbs up for us. Dominic Ingle's still got a few fighters, but yeah, he does do a number of interviews for one particular outlet, I believe, at the moment. Obviously, they've got a close relationship. Dave Caldwell, he's got Hopi Price, among others. I know that obviously Ebony Bridges moved on not too long ago, and Lerone Richards also. But yeah, I mean, Hopi's still a very interesting and exciting prospect, coming up to contender level, really, at this point. So, yeah, I mean, I think they're still doing the work day in, day out. Maybe they're just grooming the wrong word, perhaps. Maybe they're just teaching the, great fighters of tomorrow rather than people that are in the public eye right now. I mean, Ayman, you speak to Dave Caldwell quite a lot. He's got a few coming through, hasn't he?
Yeah, Steve Cairns is another one. But it's just one of those things that, like, there's room for also, even if they didn't have fighters, there's room for coaches who don't have fighters with them to speak. I really enjoy speaking with Kevin Barry, who doesn't have any active fighters at the moment, who switches attentions to American football, but obviously has a wealth of experience within boxing that you want to get the thoughts of their kind of angle on how or take on boxing. So I definitely enjoy those conversations with like say Kevin or Dave or Ali Bashir, who's got Vlad Serenko as his main fighter right now, but has worked with Emmanuel Stewart and been in the corners of Klitschko in the past. Like, definitely doesn't count out speaking to them if they don't have an active boxer on their roster.
October Red says, should be about the fighters and not the trainers. Too much pressure on them and they can mess up, and public comes down hard on them when they don't get the wins. Yeah, I mean, I think some trainers put themselves up there to be shot at as well sometimes. Obviously depends on the attitude and approach, and sometimes how many interviews they do and what they say in those interviews. But I think the fighters are the ones that bear the ultimate responsibility for wins and losses. I don't think that should change. Yoda says, honestly, I'm on the side of boxing when it comes to the Turk and Canelo. What is better for the sport of boxing? But Yoda, what do you think that is? What is better for the sport of boxing? Or who is better for the sport of boxing? Tell us. Oh, Thunder Road. I've been saying this for years and finally someone else has said it. Hopi Price, real name, no gimmicks. Honestly, I've been trying to make that happen. It's like my version of Fetch. I've been trying to make it happen for years.
Oh, man.
Hopi Price, real name, no gimmicks.
Terrible.
I think I've used it before on the channel and no one's got it as well. But anyway, Thunder Road, you can have it. Makes me think that Thunder Road's been like spying on me or something as well. Caldwell has Dan Toward as well. That's another one of his prospects coming through. Al Cuerpo boxing, completely apropos of nothing, but he's right. Hamza Shiraz versus Janibek is a great fight. Hamza Shiraz has got a tricky contest first against Tyler Denny for the European title on September 21st. So let's see if he gets through that. But if so, him against Janibek could easily be made, I would think. Russell Newton says Dom Ingle has said he's more or less retired. Quite young to retire, I suppose. His dad certainly went on for a lot longer, but maybe, he wants to spend more time with his family and so on and so forth, and concentrate on his music, perhaps, that difficult second album. So final segment this week. Radio Raheem, I don't know what he did so right, but he was invited to Derek Chisora's luxurious compound to do an interview last week. I suggest you watch it if you haven't already. It's about 25 minutes long. Really interesting stuff. It's not, calling anyone out or acting the fool or anything like that on either side. But Derek Chisora really opening up about what keeps him going in boxing, why he's not retiring, and what he wants to do before his career comes to an end. Great stuff. However, one of the comments he made attracted rather a lot of attention when talking about Martin Bakole defeating Jared Anderson at the big Riyadh Season USA show. And Chisora's main issue was that he didn't feel, he said American heavyweights or American fighters generally talk a good game, but they don't have a lot of dog in them. So in other words, when it gets tough, they're not so good at finding a way out, or they are good at finding a way out, perhaps. I don't know if he's trying to drum up future contests with some American heavyweights. You should never discount marketing as a motivating factor in anything Derek says. But yeah, I mean, he seems sincere. Ayman, what did you make of those comments when you first saw them or heard them?
Yeah, look, I think with Jared specifically, Derek's comments are kind of born out of probably seeing Jared, when I think Roy Jones Jr. is talking to him about, pressure, and we're seeing Jared Anderson kind of react to that in a way that maybe kind of old school fighters and old school persons within the industry wouldn't want to see a fighter react to those sort of comments and situations and conversations. I think that kind of is seen as like weakness. And when you don't if you've got something or someone barking at you, don't meet back with a bark, then you're kind of seen as weak or lesser than. And when a fighter like Jared Anderson would like to probably do their talking in the ring with their fists as opposed to talking outside the ring, Jared was a bit more flamboyant and a bit more dancey when it came to this pre-fight build-up here. But look, I think specifically for Jared, when it comes down to it, is I think it was a bit of a misstep, even though with the matchmaking, he kind of probably had to go to this sort of level of fight. But from my understanding is you had the options to go with someone like a Martin Bakole or a Jermaine Franklin. And for me, the Franklin fight would have been a lot more of a competitive fight. I would have backed either. You could back either fighter to get the victory there. Probably Anderson just to squeak it there. But Franklin can very much win on his day in that fight. But you've chosen Bakole, or you've been put into the position where you've got to fight Bakole. And you've bit off too much more than you could chew at this point when, there were questions being asked of you against Charles Martin. And Top Rank's matchmaking is aggressive. His team would have thought that this was a fight appropriate, and they've got this one wrong. But when it comes to Chisora's outlook on American heavyweights, I think right now, like outside of Deontay Wilder, who's really shown his mettle and shown and said some things that aren't, the best of things to say, but has, backed it up in the sense of want to be an aggressive fighter, at least post the third fight with the third fight with Tyson Fury as being a fighter who really kind of wants to just go out of the shield and go for it. I don't think Derek Chisora particularly respects any of the other in a real fighting war sort of sense. He respects all the fighters, but really in that dog eat dog kind of moment where Chisora's talking about, I was gassed after one, but I just went. I was there. I hung in there. Can the other guys do it? I'm not so sure. He would probably ask questions of the Jared Andersons, a Jarrell Miller, and Andy Ruiz, other fighters in America who the depth isn't quite there as it used to be. But I think it's an easy finger to point for Chisora when he doesn't really see an American equivalent of Chisora coming back at him. He'd probably feel different if he was fighting Deontay Wilder of prime Deontay Wilder. And when he's fought the likes of Gerald Washington in the past, who, again, isn't a Chisora-like figure either. I can understand where he's coming from, but I think his position would be different if he did fight someone like Wilder when Wilder was on the ascent, and Wilder does stand head and shoulders above when it comes to the personality types of fighters in America. But I'm not sure if Chisora would hold the same opinion if he did fight him back then.
Yoda says heavyweight division is the only one where a fighter can outweigh his opponent by 100 pounds. That has to change. Yeah, I mean, it's been talked about many times over the years. Should there be a super heavyweight division and so on? But there's never really been a groundswell to make that change. Gary, as well as saying that I would be useful in WWE because I remind him of William Regal a bit, which is a huge compliment, and I really appreciate it. Also says, hold on, just have to scroll up. Says it'd be interesting to see who the SecondsOut team like to interview. A top 5 would be great insight. I mean, it's probably not something we're going to do here on the chat because we probably need to think about it a bit. But maybe it'd be a future piece of content we can make. Most compelling interviews that either we've done or people we like to interview. Obviously, the problem is you don't want to omit people and then need to interview them a few weeks later because you're going to offend people, aren't you? But we can think about how to best do that. Thunder Road says current American heavyweights can be found on college football fields and in the NFL. You can get head trauma playing football as well, but it's much better marketed and lucrative for amateurs. Thunder Road now saying I remind him of Dexter Loomis. He's got the sketchy stalker persona down. Yeah, but Dexter Loomis had a character change. He's part of the White Six now, and he's a lot cooler than he was before. So I'll kind of take it. Daniel Smith says Turkey is disrespectful, but the boxing over the last year or so has been awesome. Yeah, it is kind of. Do you go with the greater good? Getting back to our initial topic, do you go with the greater good of Turkey and putting on the big fights? And also, how long is that going to last? Canelo's going to retire at some point, but surely Turkey will move on once another sport or another endeavor serves the purposes of, let's be honest, a bit of sports washing from the Saudi government. Once that is served better through another conduit, not boxing, surely he'll move on as well. I don't see him being here, having a Bob Arum or Frank Warren-like career. So we'll have to see. Yoda says, in the UK, do you guys rank Anthony Joshua over Lennox Lewis in the all-time greats? I mean, I certainly don't. Ayman? Put you on the spot.
Lennox Lewis over AJ? No.
Oh, so you rate AJ higher?
Sorry. I've totally misinterpreted that completely.
Who do you rank higher in the all-time list, Joshua or Lewis?
Yeah, so I don't even know why that question's been thrown out there. Is that like a we talk Lennox Lewis and Anthony Joshua, yeah? Yeah, I think someone's trying to check if we're casuals or something.
Right, okay. Yeah, I mean, Lennox Lewis 100% for me fought much better opposition and dominated for a long period. He was the best of his generation. I don't think you can say the same about Joshua having lost to Usyk twice in a row. But Joshua is an incredible fighter and has taken advantage of the proliferation of belts compared to Lewis's day by becoming a two-time and potentially even three-time in September world champion. But yeah, I mean, if you were making an all-time, I've seen Lennox Lewis appear on a lot of people's global all-time heavyweight list. So yeah, he's definitely up there. Ra Hokum says Turkey won't even be in a job in a few years, never mind boxing. So yeah, there's that too. Daniel Smith has bitten the bait just as we did and says Lennox all day, my friend. I like AJ, but Lennox is an all-time great. Lennox a monster, says SI at double B. All right, well, before we say our final goodbyes for this week's episode, we should get the result of the poll and share it with you. Modfather Vinny, if you can hear us, please do close the poll and let us know the result. We asked you at the start, due to the ongoing feud between Canelo Alvarez and Turki Alashikh, whose side are you on? And it's incredibly close. There's a 1% that's gone missing, as it often does, but we've got Team Canelo, 51%. Team Turkey, 48%. Boxing fans are torn, their hearts ripped asunder by this battle between Canelo and Turkey. Ayman, any surprise in how close the poll results are?
I would have thought maybe if Turkey is delivering these big nights, these big fights that weren't being able to make before his interruption, his inclusion, his breakthrough, whatever you want to call it, into the business of boxing, having got these fights over the line, regardless of if it was for money or not, but the fights that fans want to see, regardless of the jurisdiction that they're in, you've got them now. I would have thought he'd gathered and fostered more favor from the fight fans, but I think they're going with the fighter over the creator in this one. And I do stand a little bit surprised that Turki Alashikh hasn't got a bit more votes here over Canelo Alvarez.
Al Cuerpo Boxing says, seconds out, this poll and title is hilarious. Al Cuerpo, if this is the sort of shit you like, mate, come back next Monday, 4 p.m. British time. We're here every week. It's just as ludicrous / inspired every time. Ra Hokum asks, who's going to York Hall on Saturday? I don't know if he's asking the chat generally or he wants to know who's covering the event for us. It's Josh Hart. We haven't come up with a nickname for him yet, like Lean Josh Green, but we're working on it. But yeah, he will be there for the press conference on Thursday and then the fight night on Saturday. Really, really good fight, actually. We should mention Denzel Bentley against Derek Asazi. Might not get loads of headlines, but Denzel Bentley is the WBO #2 middleweight. So is in line for a world title shot should he keep winning. And Derek Asazi, an awkward and motivated customer, won an Ultimate Boxer tournament not that long ago before his career. Kind of came off the tracks a little bit after a defeat to Tyler Denny, which doesn't look so bad considering the form that Denny's been on recently. So definitely a fight worth watching on TNT on Saturday night. And Yoda says, I feel like the UK appreciates the sweet science a little bit more than in the States. In the States, they like a Mexican slugfest nowadays. We like a slugfest too. I'm not sure. I think you're giving us maybe a little bit too much credit there. Ra Hokum says, young Josh is too serious for one so young. We like them to be serious when they're getting paid to cover boxing for Seconds Out, to be honest. We don't like them to be too frivolous. But yeah, I think he shows his more light-hearted side when he's on the live, which he may be next week, because next Monday is my birthday. I'm turning 21 for about the 30th time or whatever it might be. So I will not be on the live next Monday, but TBC, who will be joining Ayman Khan in the hot seat. Actually, they're not going to share a seat. We're not that budget friendly here at Seconds Out. Big Chungus says, leave Josh alone. Big Chungus loves everyone on Seconds Out. I'm not sure who it is, but yeah. Ra Hokum says, you need to show him a good time, Danny. I'm not sure quite how that was phrased, Ra Hokum. Young Josh, yeah, I mean, he may be shown a good time. It probably won't be by me.
There's no fights in Bournemouth happening right now.
No, well, exactly. Yeah. me, Ben Shalom, and Sugar Hill need to get him to join the Sugar Hill gang, which does sound a bit creepy now I think about it. Yoda says, do you think Shakur Stevenson is boring? That's a whole other episode, Yoda. Maybe we'll go into that next week. Ra Hokum's asking where he can send my birthday gift. If you see Josh Hart on Saturday, we can test how trustworthy he is by passing it on through him, and we'll see what happens. Depending on what it is, no contraband. Posh Josh Green won't find prawn sandwiches at York Hall, says Thunder Road. Yeah, well, that's why he's not going. He refused. Unless it was well catered, he said, I'm not going. Big Chungus says, I could show Ayman a good time, which I think is a great time to end this week's episode. Ayman, as is usually the custom, please do give us your closing remarks. If you want to address Big Chungus directly, you're more than welcome.
How about Josh shot through the?
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. Yeah, or owner of a lonely.
Owner of a lonely, yeah, that's even better. I quite like that one.
We've got to work on it. Or Josh the Hitman Hart, surely.
Josh, it's just too obvious. It's too easy, that one. We'll come back. Maybe we'll leave it to the chat. You've got to have a nickname maybe that you don't quite like or want to receive. So maybe the chat, next time Josh jumps on, you can throw some nicknames at him and we'll bless him with one. But thank you guys for joining us on another edition of Seconds Out Live. Myself and Danny Flexen and Vinny Kiss behind the cameras helping us to bring you another edition. Thank you for your chats as well too. Thumbs up. All the support goes a long way. Make sure you leave a comment to post the live. We do look at those and respond to them sometimes as well, so we appreciate that greatly. We have, of course, as mentioned, young Josh Hart out in the field in York Hall, probably a sweltering York Hall. We thought that today was hot. Josh Hart will be feeling it this weekend against Denzel Bentley, who will be in action, like we mentioned, against Derek Chisora. So we'll keep you abreast of all the boxing news and latest from the week, which is, like mentioned, a little bit quiet, but we're actively working out here trying to bring you the best interviews in the industry alongside that too. So thank you so much for joining on this week's live. That's it for this week. We'll see you guys on the next one. Happy birthday to Danny Flexen as well too. We'll leave it on that one. Happy birthday to his Flexcellency.